All right, what's going on, guys? This is Divij. Welcome back to another episode of LA Hustlers. Today, I'm joined by the amazing Raquel Marie. Say hi.
Hey.
So Raquel has an amazing story. Her and I connected on LinkedIn, and I reached out after seeing her website, which is y2k.ai, and I was very intrigued sort of by what you have going on because it was a bit mysterious, a bit playful, and your LinkedIn profile definitely stood out. So I was like, I got to see kind of like what you got going on. So I appreciate you getting on the podcast. I'm looking forward to our conversation. But with that being said, I kind of just want to dive in. Well, first off, how's your day going?
It's going great. I mean, it's that perfect weather outside, so everything's good. The sun's always shining. I mean, there's nothing more you could ask for.
For sure. And you're in LA, right? Downtown?
Yes.
Nice. Yeah, you got good weather. It's supposed to rain pretty soon, though. Hopefully it doesn't, because I don't like the rain. But cool. So, look, again, I appreciate you getting on. I kind of just want to start from, like, the way beginning, kind of just, like, how you started out, or not even how you started in your career, but even before that, sort of, like, where you're from, what your upbringing was, and kind of what, like, childhood was for you. So you want to dive into that?
Well, basically, we're kind of like your typical Puerto Rican family. Like, we come from the island, but like we lived in New York because that's where like all Puerto Rican people go live first for some reason.
Yeah.
It's like, I always joke around. I'm like, look, it's not like the 50s. Like, you don't have to go through Ellis Island. Like, all the Puerto Rican people don't have to live in New York first, right? That's not the only point. So that's where I'm originally from, and then I moved to Florida. And a lot of my family is still in New York, and then some of my family is in Florida. And basically, when I was like a kid, I was like very, very much into art. I have two brothers. And so most of the time, like, they're playing outside, and I was always inside just creating things. And that's kind of how it was. And I showed like a ton of passion and excitement for art, but my family was like very hesitant because they were like, whoa, you're going to be like a broke artist, right? And I was like, oh my God, I don't want to be broke. Like, who wants to be broke? Like,
right.
You tell like any kid that, like, you're going to be poor, they're going to be like, I don't want that.
Right.
So it was really hard for me to just like find that way of like, monetizing my work and what I could do with that. So, just like some small accomplishment, like when I was like, I think I was 7 or 8, I had like my artwork put into the museum, and it was just a painting, but it was like, that's kind of like how young I started when I started creating things. And, I really kept pushing myself. So, later down the road, I was taking some classes, like kind of like picking your like middle school, high school electives, and there was like, of course, all the good stuff is unavailable, right? Like, everyone wants yoga because it's like, you're doing nothing.
Right.
Oh, I want to stretch for like a credit. And all the good stuff was taken. There was like no art because I was like very, I procrastinated a lot, and I was like not super responsible growing up. Like, I was very much like a wild child. My brothers and, even my parents were, very kind of structured people where like my father was like successful. He had, he works for one of like the biggest insurance companies running their IT infrastructure.
Yeah.
And, my mother was like a single, she had my older brother when she was really young. She was about like 17, 18. So, I can't even remember where I was going with this, but it was like, she was like very focused on school. Like, everyone's like, you have to go to college, you have to go to school, like,
right.
Pick a career, go be a lawyer. They're like, even my mom was like, at least try to be like an actress, like do something, right? Like,
right.
Anything but like be an artist, because we don't want you to be poor. And so back to picking my courses, I took like a computer science, and I was like, wait, this is kind of interesting because I can, essentially implement that creative itch that I always have, and I can actually turn it to something digitally. So So I started with illustration at first, just creating like digital artwork because there was a demand for that, especially, for online gaming. And at the time, like there was a lot of like graphics and like really interesting work online. This was like this was like before 2008, right? Where like the internet was like a really weird place, right? Like all these like flashing lights and like all this like really nuts stuff that like we look at now and we're like, that is insane.
Right.
And that's like the internet culture that like I'm obsessed with because that's what I grew up seeing all the time where, oh my gosh, did we get the AOL 30-day trial CD in the mail?
Yeah. I remember AOL.
God,
Those are like,
right?
It's crazy.
Yeah, and like your mom would like start making a phone call and you'd be like, Mom, I'm chatting with strangers on the internet. Can you get off the phone?
Right.
I'm endangering my life. Please let me continue. And so I really just, making art through like web was just like huge for me. And, later on I got more into the web stuff. And at this time, there wasn't, this is like between like 2005, 2010, there wasn't like design and development, right? There wasn't that separation. It was like, okay, you do design, so you have to develop too.
Right.
So it was like you had to learn both skills where like now you have like UX, UI, and then you have development, and then you even have like these like other like crazy titles. It's unreal. I'm like, do people make these up? They're like product designer. I'm like, oh, you mean you put a button on the screen? Like, but it's like, I don't want to offend any product designers.
Sure.
But it's just interesting how far it's come.
Right. In a span of like 10 to 15 years. But so when you were doing these classes, was that high school or was that college for you?
It was high school.
That was high school. Okay. So did you go to college?
Right.
I
tried several times. I'll just say I attempted because at the time I was already making a bit of money, so I didn't see any value in it. And because like I was making so much money, it's not like, I qualified for any like financial aid or anything. So it's like I had to pay cash for my classes. I didn't have like the option to just, go like the loan route because my family wasn't willing to, sign off on loans for me. Because at the time I was under 24, you needed co-signing for classes. So I did try a few times. 5 times.
Wow.
And each time I just like dropped out because there was no like, it wasn't adding value to what I was doing because that's not a requirement. And at the same time, like the problem you run into is like, I'm sure like you see it too, where like your market's really saturated because the barrier to entry is so low, right? Like you don't need anything to be like a designer. You can just like wake up one day, take an hour course, and you're like, hey guys, I'm a web designer.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So I can only imagine if it was like doctors, right? Like a doctor, like, hey, you take an hour course. Everyone would be a doctor because there's so much like money in medicine, right?
Right.
So, definitely a college dropout. Sometimes I think about it and I'm like, oh, it would have been nice if I finished, but at the same time, it's like, even now I don't have time for that, and I haven't been able to justify the cost.
Of course.
And that I don't feel like me obtaining that would, increase my annual, income or anything like that.
Yeah. Okay, so that's interesting because I've talked to a lot of people where they either went to college and they finished because their parents wanted them to, or they tried college and they dropped out because, just they didn't feel like it was contributing to their career. They didn't learn by sitting in the classroom. So, but for you, it was like you tried it 5 times. So was it that you just didn't, like you wanted to have a college degree, but you wanted to find a place that you felt was actually contributing or that you fit in, or why did you try so many times?
I think it was like mostly kind of like my family and just society in general, where I felt like okay, my friends are doing this. I'm not doing this. My family wants me to do this. Maybe I should try to do this. But, the reason why I kept stopping myself and I kept leaving is because in everything that I do, I'm always thinking about what is the return on investment.
Right.
And I didn't really see any return from that or any possible return because I had already been doing design for so long.
Yeah.
It was like if someone has a degree, it doesn't, I'm running a business, it doesn't matter. And, I would out experience them anyways. But, that's kind of my viewpoint. But I do feel like school is necessary for certain things, being a lawyer, being a doctor. But I didn't find that it was particularly helpful for me.
Sure.
But yeah, I hope you didn't, I hope you're not into a PhD and I'm over here. I'm it has no value to my life.
No. So you can ask anybody that knows me. So I actually did go to school. I went to USC and I graduated, with no loans or anything. 'Cause luckily parents were able to handle the cost, but I've always been not anti-school, but I just think that the way that the college system in particular is set up, it's not, like you said, it depends. If you're trying to become a lawyer or a doctor, obviously you have to go through a certain number of steps. But for someone like me and you, where it's I'm selling real estate and I'm doing these influencer brand deals, you don't learn a lot of that sitting in a classroom. You can just learn it on Google and on YouTube. So I hesitantly finished. I really didn't, it wasn't for me, but I just did it because, I was like, whatever, I've already started, may as well just get through it. But, so that's cool. So did you always have an entrepreneurial bug, or did you catch it? Do you feel like you caught it later, or what did that look like?
I feel like I've always kind of been that way. Not that money's the most important thing, mm-hmm. but I've always felt like money's extremely important. My mother, when I was 5 years old, she was like, Raquel, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, I want to be a millionaire. And it's really weird for a 5-year-old to say that. I'm sure I picked it up from the TV or something, but of course I didn't think of that on my own. But it's that always stuck with me where, even every day I'm doing something, I'm how much closer can I get to, X amount? And it, it's that one part, that one memory I hold on to where my mom's like, what do you want to do? And she wants me to say that I want to be a veterinarian, right? She really wants me to say that.
Right.
And then I just tell her, I'm like, no, I want to be a millionaire. And that was kind of how I was. I grew up, I saw my mom working really hard all the time. She was a single mother because my parents were divorced and there was 3 of us and she was really struggling. And I just never wanted to be like that. And then it was money was so important to her because she needed money to pay bills. She needed money for this and that.
Yeah.
So money became extremely important to me as well. And, there were some things that my father would do. He's remarried now, but he would buy me something small. It would be a Gucci, the small credit card wallet, right? Mm-hmm. Something like that. And he would be like, yes. He'd be like, if you work hard, you can get more stuff like this.
Yeah.
Because this is luxuries that life has to offer. And, I'm kind of happy that he did that. It's very materialistic. But at the same time, it was okay, yeah, I want nice things.
Yeah.
And it's I don't want to I don't know, because it sounds really it's not, doesn't sound super humble or anything, but it's that's what I want for myself. I want to have money because the more money I have, the more creative expression I have, the more I can do.
Right. The more people
I
can
build businesses.
Yeah.
Right. Build businesses, build myself. Okay, maybe one day I want to make an app, right?
Right.
I'm hey, I want to make an app. Obviously, I can't build an app by myself, right? I can just go do that. Okay, let me make an app this week. And it's that's what money does. It gives you the power to build yourself and build on things that you want. And it helps you create and build things.
Yeah.
So that's super, has always been super important to me.
100%. I think you and I have a very similar take on money. And I think money is one of those things that in college, especially, it's not talked about enough. Even in high school, I can't remember one time where they talked about money or how it works or taxes or what's the IRS. And that's the kind of shit that we needed to learn. And, obviously I think I'm in my early 20s, so I'm learning it as I go. Right. But, I think that, like, for example, I don't remember what the percentage is, but it's like X amount of Americans aren't invested in the stock market, or like, haven't formed like people don't know what an LLC is. So I just think when you have more money, and I think you have probably seen this as you've gotten more money, you're able to touch more people and you're able to do more impactful things. And I think, again, money is like, it's the only thing we keep track of as like a human population. It's like the only thing that's on our mind 24/7 besides food, sex, and sleep, right? So like, I think, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so I like that you said that. So, okay, so you graduate high school, you try college, and then you said you started making money. What were you doing, and how are you monetizing your work?
I was doing web design, and it was like kind of different back then because it wasn't super saturated, and there weren't all these like, now there's like a lot of like website builders and stuff like that, which is great because it kind of does the filtering for me, because it's like someone who wants to build their website like on a website builder is not someone who would like appreciate what I do, right? What I do is like so much more than just like web design. It's like that first impression, that what do people feel when they go to your website? And all this is like, it's like subconscious. So It's like, being able to deliver that message. So that's what I was doing. And, I just continued to do that and just build on that. And I was essentially like running my own small agency, before the age of 20. And it was because I had been building this for so long.
Yeah, that's amazing. And how were you getting clients? Were you like cold calling? Were you just finding people? What was that process?
I would let me tell you something. I had no shame.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did not. Now it's a little different because now it's like your personal branding is like so important, and what people think of you is even more important. But at the time, I did not care. I would just call like anyone, and I would call and I would pitch them, and like a lot of people were like, "Oh yeah, let's do this." I would send cold emails, and it was like, I don't know how to describe it other than like, it was like, I don't know. I guess people have to be in that position to really experience it. But like when you're really trying to push your product, it's like you will do anything. Yeah. You don't even care.
Anything and everything to get your name in front of as many people as you can. And I'll tell a quick story. So when I was in college at SC, I had a similar business called Divij Media, where we were doing like social media services and website development. And my buddy, who's actually behind the camera right now because he works with me still, we rented a Ferrari. This was like the second day we started our business. We paid like $800 to rent this Ferrari, and we drove around Beverly Hills, just parking in front of random retail stores. And we would just walk into the stores and say, "Hey, we have this little social media business. We'd love to like help you with social." And they'd see the Ferrari that we just hopped out of, and in their mind, it's kind of like social proof, right? So literally the second day we did this, we locked in a client for like $5,000 a month, like on the spot. And like they paid us, they gave us a check. And it was just one of those things where like, when you're in that position of like, you believe in your craft so much and you just want to help as many people and make as much money as you can, like you'll do whatever you need to do and you'll get creative. So at that point, how many clients did you have? Did you have like a lot of clients? Was it just a few?
It wasn't too many, because my main focus was obtaining like bigger clients, because I wanted that longevity and I wanted to like work with people who were going to just keep it going. Like they like me, they want to keep it alive. And still like till this day, I have people who will like just specifically say like, "Hey, I just want to contract like you personally." And I'll be on like a retainer and things like that. So it's like I still like have that kind of like business model where I'm not volume is not necessarily important to me, right? It's like I want to do quality work and I want people to appreciate it. And the people that appreciate quality work, you know, there's not a lot of people, right? There's not a lot of people who appreciate certain aspects of web. And so like my pool is really small, but you know, like for example, like you saw my website and you were like, oh, your website's like nuts, right? Everyone says that. They're like, your website's nuts. And I know that. And I know that my website's nuts. And I know that a lot of people might not like it.
Sure.
But the reality is like, I don't care. Because the people who do like it will like me.
Correct. And if you guys, for the people listening, go check out the website. It's y2k.ai, right? Is that right?
Yes.
And it's cool because when it says like turn the screen, and then you turn the screen, and then it says Kat is like working on something, right? So I laughed when I saw that. And like if I personally needed website services, I would literally have hired you like immediately because I love cats. Like I'm a huge cat guy. And just that alone was super funny. So is that kind of your specialty? Like sort of this like niche, it almost has like gaming vibes to it. Is that kind of what you're focused on?
Well, there's like a marketing video. I'll send you the link that's like associated with it. And it was because that I had, this was actually like a few years ago, I took a break from design and I was like, you know, hey, I want to go traveling, right? Like I just moved to LA. I was there for like a year and I was like, oh, screw this. I'm going to go to Hawaii, right? And then, you know, I was like, oh, I want to travel. So then I started traveling. So I took like a 3-year break and I traveled full time. So what ended up happening is that during this time, I wanted to like make my comeback. So the whole thing is like Y2K apocalypse kind of thing. Like, oh, I just came out of the apocalypse. Here I am. Right? Like this is where I am now. Like it was like very like I'm emerging from, you know, 2014 or whatever that was, right? I'm like re-emerging, and that's kind of like what that symbolizes. But sometimes I do, to answer your question, sometimes I do get people who are very like gaming focused and they like that style. And I like gaming because I feel like it's really interesting. It's really fun to do. Yeah. But I'll also get people who are like very brand focused, and then they'll see that brand that's carried throughout like almost everything I do, like the language, like how I write stuff, how I type it. Even like I haven't, I'll send you an email, but even my email signature is like, it has that, you know, green, that bright green, like old school computer type. Everything I do is super branded. So it's people who are like very focused on their brand and building that brand. A lot of gaming, and then I'll get like a lot of like ad work because people who are in the ad business, they love seeing something different. They don't want to see like your landing page with like some portfolio items. Right. They don't care, right? They want to see something like visually interesting and stimulating. Yeah.
Yeah, no, your work is really cool, and you know, there's a lot of web designers out there, but I feel like you have this very like, it's just so unique. Like, there's not even really a word for it. So, what kind of projects have you been working on recently? Like, any big things you're able to share?
Well, right now I have kind of like, right now I'm doing like a massive website, so it's been like a lot of like looking over it and like checking things. I mean, it's huge. It's like hundreds and hundreds of pages.
Oh, wow. Jesus.
And it's a migration. So it's not like they're upgrading. So they're coming off a platform. So it's not like, oh, okay, let me just export this website. It needs to be done by hand, essentially. So that's kind of like what I'm working on right now.
Cool.
And there was like something I wanted to talk to you about your story where you're talking about like you rented the car, right? So something that like it's so crazy because it's like everyone wants to be humble, but like the reality is like people don't care. Like they want to see you like at your peak, right? They don't care like about any of the other stuff. And it's like I always tell people, I'm like, impressions are like number one. I'm like, you gotta like look healthy, you gotta like look like you make an effort
Right.
in the morning, right?
Right.
And people are like, oh, that's so superficial. But I'm like, I understand that. But people who see that, that's everyone. Everyone there's some level of them being superficial. It's like, this is just how society is, right? So paying back on that, when I first moved to LA, like I wanted to like get more like networked and connected with people. So I wanted to get like my photos done. So I was like, oh, there was this house that I wanted to shoot in. So I contacted the owner, and they were like a executive. But anyway, I was like, I want to do a shoot here. And like, I paid them, I paid them and rented out their house for a few hours.
Wow.
And that's how like, I like broke into that. And it's like, that's what you have to do. Like in business, if you want to be successful, you'll do whatever you have to do. You'll invest in that, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, let me do this. Let me get myself in front of this person. This is what I need to do. This is how much it costs.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's those kinds of actions that, it's the big actions, right? Because you can sit at your computer all day and send out emails and do calls, and all that stuff is important. But I think when you're an entrepreneur and you have ideas like that, like, oh, hey, let me go rent this Ferrari and pull up in front of stores and try and walk in and get clients, or let me go ask this homeowner if I can use his house, whether that was for you trying to meet the executive or for whatever reason. I think when you have those ideas, it's so crucial to like just execute on them, even though you may be like thinking like, oh, this may not even work out, or they're going to say no, or it may not be like worth the time. Like you have to just show up and try it. Cause you really like, let's say you were selling real estate and you wanted to use that guy's house for a shoot. And then you ended up meeting him and he loved you and he like wanted you to sell his house, and that house was like $10 million. That's like a $200,000 commission or more, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so you have to take those steps. So that's cool that you did that. So your story is so interesting because you came from like drawing at 5 or like doing art at 5 to now like doing these big projects. Like, do you have a team behind you that's helping you in terms of bandwidth?
I do. Usually I do, but I'm very, very selective. So I kind of have a really good eye for talent because I've been doing this for so long. It's like someone can send me a message and I'll know like immediately, is this the person I want to work with? And, looking at their work and kind of going through it and seeing like, okay, is this something that I like? Is this something I would do? Sometimes I, run into people where I'm like, wow, their stuff is like better, It's like sometimes, there's people that out there that are better than you. So it's like, this is why you have to be on top of your game all the time. But yeah, mostly, I do work as a team especially for bigger projects, but occasionally I will have people who are just like, no, we like you. We just want you.
Just want you, yeah. And
like, hey, lead the art direction for our company until we get it kind of like consistent and going.
Gotcha.
So sometimes that'll be like a 6-month contract. I'll essentially like build a good foundation for them, and then they can take that and kind of like build on it themselves.
Sure. You mentioned like staying on top of your game and that sometimes clients like just want you. How do you, because right now I'm a big advocate of like mental health and like, why social media has caused a lot of us issues with our mental health. How have you, or let's take it micro. What are things that you do like every day, whether it's in the morning or during the day, at night, to like keep you right, like up here? You know what I mean? Because if you're not yourself, people aren't going to want to work with you. So how do you do that?
I don't even know if I'm right up there. So
I love that.
I love that. I think for me, I just try, I've been in positions, it's interesting you bring this up, where I've had like people that like, want to work with me, right? And I've been in positions where I'm like very like overloaded with stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you have to decide at that point, like, okay, is it, even if you're making a lot of money, it's like sometimes it's not worth your time, and it's not worth like the mental, I guess it's like not worth the stress is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So it's like when you're in a situation like that, especially when you're working with someone and they're not respecting like your personal time or anything like that, it doesn't matter how much they're paying you. It's like you have to let that go, because the reality is the time they're taking, that's time you can be working on new sales. That's time you could be, you know, working on your appearance, which would also help you get sales.
Yeah.
That's a time where you can like make sure, you know, you aren't super stressed out. But I think for me, it's like every day I work every day, and it's like there's some hours of the day I'm like doing nothing, and that's kind of how I like it, because it's spread out. Like I don't take off like a weekend and show up on Monday and I'm like scared, right? Like,
the Sunday scaries.
Like, oh my God, it's Monday. Like, yeah, I don't feel like that, because I'm always doing something.
Right, because your work is integrated into your life. It's not like you're set working 9 to 5 and then you're living your life after. It's like art is, and this is what I'm gathering, is like art is your life. So it's like you've integrated it into like whatever else you need to do. Would you say that's accurate?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's like I'm also very selective about like the people that I work with. Like maybe you have a client and they're like kind of difficult. It's like I just wouldn't work with that person anymore.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds like crazy and it sounds like harsh and like, oh, that's missed money. It's like, no, I can't work with people like that, because they mess with my chi. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I need to be like mentally healthy, and people like that are not like healthy for me. So it's like I can't work with people like that. And I think being selective about the people that I work with and the people I surround myself with has been super helpful, because I'm never in a situation where others are stressing me out, because the people I'm around would never do anything to stress me out, right?
Yeah.
Except my family. But I think that's everyone.
That's everyone, for
that's
sure.
That's everyone.
I love
that.
that.
Doesn't count.
Yeah, no, for sure. I love that. What about like working out, meditation, like stuff like that? Do you do any of that to keep you right?
I try to work out. I do like a little bit of fasting too, because I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. I think it's like there's so many aspects of your life, right, that you can't really totally control. And I think it's like I can control like what I'm eating.
Yeah.
I can control if I'm working out or not. And I can like sometimes control like what time I wake up and go to sleep, right?
Yeah.
So I think those are things that I try to focus on a lot, like what I can control. And it's like the sleep is important, right? Working out, fasting, or making sure I'm eating correctly.
Yeah.
Is another thing.
Are you getting a full 8 hours every night?
Oh, no.
No?
I sleep like 4 to 6.5 hours usually.
Okay. But that works.
This is just...
That works for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. I can sleep like 12 hours. Don't get me wrong. I can. But it's like sometimes I get 4 hours and that's like totally okay. Sometimes I get, 6, but that's kind of like my sweet spot where I'm the most productive and I'm not feeling like overslept.
Okay, yeah. So you have to find what works for you. Because when I was in college and the couple years after college, I was listening to a lot of like Gary Vee and like all these different entrepreneurs, and it wasn't even Gary Vee, but there was a lot of them that were saying like, you got to hustle 24/7, like sleep kills dreams, all this stuff. And it got to a point where I was sleeping like 4 to 6 hours a night, and I'd wake up and I'd feel feverish and my stomach would hurt, but I was like still just trying to work because that's what my mentors online said to do. But over the last like 6 months, I've realized that like I cannot fuck with my 8 hours. Like if I don't get 8 hours, I'm a zombie. You know what I mean? So I just think I see a lot of people that are like in their like, let's say 18 to like 22, where they feel like they need to be go all the time. But do you think that translates to like more success, or do you think, do you know what I mean? Like it's just, I think that's such a wrong, a wrong thing.
I would say no, because I think it's like, it is really interesting, because it's like, I watch these people too, right? And they're like, oh yeah, sleep is like, oh, don't sleep. Oh, I'm successful because I don't sleep. And it's like, yeah, but sleep's important. And I don't think it's like so much like what you do with like 4 to 8 hours of your day. I think it's more like, what are you doing the rest of the day? And I think for me, it's like, I'm super ADD, so I always catch myself doing unnecessary stuff. Like, do I really need to take a 40-minute shower? No, I don't.
Oh, guilty.
It can be 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah.
do I need to sit here like and eat extremely slow? Like,
Right.
no, I don't need to do that. So I think it's about like cutting these kind of habits out. Like, oh, do I need to be on social media all the time? Do I need to watch Netflix? And I think it's like taking these things out is like, that's what helps you be more productive. It's not cutting the sleep, because when you cut your sleep, you can't function. And what happens is your body starts like, when you sleep, I think it's like less than 5 hours or 4 hours, something like that.
Yeah.
Your body, like at first you feel like your adrenaline kicks in. So you feel like, oh, I'm so productive. I'm getting so much done, right? Because you have that, you're anxious, your adrenaline's running. So like you're mistaking that for, you know, being productive, right? But then day 2 rolls around, day 3, and it's like it slowly just like gets worse and worse, where you're not as productive, you're not getting as much done because your body's reacting to that. It needs to sleep.
Yeah.
So I feel like sleep is crucial if you want to function at your peak performance and be that person you're supposed to be, which is like yourself, right? Like no one can be a better you than like you can. So it's like, that's what you got to do.
For sure. Yeah. You have to just find out what works. Cause like some people can sleep on or can function on the 4 to 6, like, but some people need 8 to 10, and that's okay. But you just have to figure out what works. I guess the last couple things I wanted to ask, what are some of your art inspirations or current artists that you follow or that you appreciate? Current or previous, doesn't matter.
It's really interesting because it's like I don't have like a specific artist that like I follow or anything. I just try to, this is going to sound so arrogant, I just try to like do something different from what I've previously done.
Yeah.
And that's my inspiration is like, do something different, think of something cooler, do something better. But I do follow like a lot of like, I love people like in entertainment. So like you know, a lot of music artists and, you know, like a lot of public speakers like Gary Vee. I like following them because I feel like that's inspiring for me from like a brand and personality standpoint, because it's like, okay, be your true self. But I think it's looking for inspiration. I see inspiration in fashion, how people dress and how they behave, right? That's like my inspiration. Like, okay, what are people visually responding to? And I think that's like where, I don't know, that's where it comes from. I seek inspiration through like other artistic avenues, not really design, right? Because design is it's very much like, it's just a bunch of people just copying a bunch of other stuff.
Got it.
So to make myself, you know, they see like a landing page and they're like, I like that style. And then like the next website they make looks like that, right? Like a lot of designers do that. So I think I try to pull inspiration from other, you know, things, like I said, fashion and just even street art, because that helps me stay fresh. I'm not looking at other people's digital work and then trying to get inspiration from that, because it's going to look similar.
Yeah.
Right? It's, you know, I don't even know if I described that right.
No, that makes...
I hope you got it.
That makes a lot of sense. So I used to work at Universal Music, so I got a little bit of a taste of the music industry, and a lot of the rappers and talent that I knew, they would say that they would never listen to like another person's music because they feel like it would their style would start to integrate too much with whatever they listen to. So they find their inspiration from, you know, high-end fashion or shoes or whatever it is. So I've heard that before, and it makes a lot of sense.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You did a much better job of explaining that than I did. But yes, I just look at other things so that my stuff doesn't look like other people's work.
Yeah. Basically. There we go. That makes sense. Cool. Amazing. Awesome. I think we covered everything I wanted to. I guess last question to kind of just wrap it up. If you could go back and tell yourself, because you mentioned that when you were younger, you were doing art and your parents said that, you know, you're going to be broke, but you may not make a lot of money. What would you, but it seems like now you're doing perfectly fine. So what would you tell yourself if you could go back? What's the advice you give to like little Raquel?
I I would tell her that, to just not care what other people think.
Yep.
And I think when you're really young, it's like you look to the people you spend the most time with, and that's usually your parents. And I think your parents have the biggest impact on, the way you think, right? Not always, because some people like break through that and like maybe they grew up, in poverty and then they just become like a billionaire. And, there are people who break through that, but I would just tell myself like, hey, don't like listen to what other people say. I certainly didn't really care what people thought, but when it came to my family, I did. And that was the problem, is like, I didn't care what anyone thought, but it was like the second, like my dad is like my heart, right? My dad says, oh, I'm disappointed about this. Oh my God, it would just like crush me.
Right.
I'd be like, oh my God, my dad is upset with me. I would be like devastated. So it's like stuff like that, where it's like your the best way I could describe it is like, you can't live for other people. So it's like, you're only on earth for a certain amount of time. Like, if your parents are, or someone your loved one or like a friend, if they're like, they've passed, right? Do you think they would look at you and be like, wow, why didn't you become a lawyer like I thought you should?
Yeah.
Like, no, of course not. They would be like, wow, I want you to do what makes you happy, right? I want you to do what's going to like really, make you feel like you're fulfilling your purpose in life. Like, no one's thinking that. And I think when you're young and to some extent when you get older, it's like you always feel that pressure of, I want to make them happy. But at the end of the day, it's like your family doesn't care. They're going to love you no matter what. So it really doesn't matter what you do. And I like literally mean that. It doesn't matter. Pick any career.
Literally.
It could be the worst one ever. Your family will still love you. They will not care. Will they be proud of you? Maybe not, but that's okay because I'm sure more people than just them are not proud of you. So like, don't worry about it.
Right.
And that's like, I guess that's the advice I would give myself. Like, hey, stop worrying about what your family thinks, because at the end of the day, this is like, I read this somewhere and it stuck with me. It's like, my life is like a sandwich. The bread always comes first, right? Okay, so it doesn't matter what my family thinks. The bread comes first. And if I'm like pursuing something that I think will make money, then like that's what I need to do. The bread comes first.
For sure.
Like first, then I can help everyone else, right?
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, you're so right. I couldn't agree with you more. That's exactly what I would say. And I think when you get to a point, and I don't even know if I'm fully there yet. I think it'll come with a little bit more experience and just time. But when you get to a point of like, you walk into a room of like 100 strangers and you literally physically and mentally just do not give one fuck about what everyone else thinks. And you're just in your own like zone, in your own bubble, like that feeling. And I've had that. I mean, I have that feeling sometimes when I'm in public, but obviously there's other times where I'm self-conscious and I'm working on it. But when those feelings do come, it's like, you feel you really feel unstoppable for real. So yeah. People
feel that energy too. Like It's like people like, that's why, especially in sales, like when and I know like you have to go, I don't want to keep you here too long.
I'm good.
Like when you're in sales, like people can sense that energy from you that you like really care about that sale, right? People don't want you, right? It's like, it's really interesting because I always like compare it to like dating. It's like everything's like dating. Like, do you want to date like the girl who's just like blowing your phone up all the time, or do you want to date the girl that like doesn't respond to your text? And it sounds really immature, but it's like 100% true. I don't care how old you are. It's like, it's just most people want what they can't have. And when you go into a room and you don't care about what other people think of you, they feel that energy. They care about you at that point. Okay, this person doesn't care. I wonder what's going on with them. I'm interested in this person.
Yeah.
Right? So I think like, yeah, just have that like attitude. Like, I don't care. Because at the end of the day, what's the worst that's going to happen?
100%. Exactly. What someone thinks a bad thought. Okay. You're never going to see that person again.
Who are they, right? Like,
right.
Who are they? Like, if you're not like, Jeff Bezos, like, I don't really care.
Yeah.
Right? If you're not Elon Musk, like, I don't care what you think of me, right?
Yeah.
It's like even higher level people like that, it's like, why do you even care what they think of you? You know what I mean? It just, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It just doesn't matter.
Everyone's in their own head anyways. Everyone's concerned about how they look, how they feel, how they present themselves. Like, they're not even worried about you. So why should you care? You know what I mean? All right. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much, Raquel. Well, her website is y2k.ai. So definitely go check that out. And then she's on LinkedIn. And then I'll link the other channels and stuff. So thank you so much. This was great.